Hello and welcome to the Handsell. I'm Ron Hogan and I am at Book Court in Brooklyn. And my guest today is Brian Russell. He is the author of The Year of What Now? It's here as part of the Graywolf Poetry Tour. And as I was reading through these poems, something that was in the introduction sort of stuck with me in the way that it was talking about how, although obviously this is a narrative sequence of poems, that we shouldn't necessarily get caught up in that narrative and be using the be thinking about the narrative in ways that sort of separate us out from what you're actually trying to do with the poems and with the language. There's like two different sorts of things going on there.
Yeah, I'm really glad for Tom's Slice's introduction. I think it foregrounds the book in the way that I was hoping it would. The book started from some things that were happening in my life that became kind of the jumping off point for the book. But it became its own sort of story in that the narrator of the poems, is maybe a hypothetical version of me, but it really does become its own story. And it was a way for me to write about different events that had happened in my life that people in my life were affected by serious illness, and it allowed me to write about both of them at the same time. And in a way, I wrote it to try to better understand, what they were going through. And that's kind of how it started.
And as you say, I think it gives you opportunities that, like, straight up autobiography, whether it would be autobiographical prose or even autobiographical poems, would not have given you that same freedom or flexibility.
Right. Yeah. I think in a maybe somewhat of a paradoxical way, it almost, I think, allowed me to write about what I wanted to write about, the situations that I wanted to write about, in a more honest way that I might not be able to were straight autobiography, if that makes sense. When you're, I think you run the risk of kind of co-opting people's lives in that way when you're involving other people. That it kind of gets into a dangerous area that I wasn't interested in.
So what we do on the Handsell is that we get lists of books or authors, and then I bring them to the bookstores and go over them with my guests, and we figure out what sorts of things to recommend to read next. And with the Graywolf Poetry Tour coming through Book Court, it actually sort of presented itself as its own little list. So my question to you, Brian, is that, after I've been to this reading and I've enjoyed the poems of Sophie Cabot Black and Burt and you, what do you think I should be reading next?
Yeah, I think all three of us have a strong commitment to narrative in one way or another. I think we each kind of approach it differently, but a book that I'm trying to get everybody to read right now is When My Brother Was an Aztec by Natalie Diaz. It's out from Copper Canyon. It came out last year. It's an unbelievable book. It's a book of poetry. It's her first book, which is almost unbelievable in how good it is. It deals with sort of Native American tribal mythology mixed in with modern day life. It centers around the speaker's brother, who has a meth addiction that's kind of tearing the family apart, and he, I won't give away the ending, you should just read it. But it's really incredible. She's, her use of language is great. It's very frank, it's funny, it's devastating. I would really highly recommend that. Another book that I'm interested in is Kathleen Rooney's Robinson Alone, which is a novel in verse. It's about the life of Weldon Keys. He had a sort of pseudo alter ego, I guess I should say, called Robinson, and just a handful of his poems, and she takes that character of Robinson and really sort of pushes him through Weldon Keys' life. So we follow him from his job in New York across the country through, he was from Nebraska, and he ends up in San Francisco and eventually disappears. Everyone assumes he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, but we don't know. And the poems really explore that and kind of bring that to life in a way, and it really brings focus back to Keys, who kind of gets forgotten and was a really great poet in the 50s, and well before that too. Those are two recent books that I think I've been really excited about.
Great. Well, I will definitely make a point of tracking those down. And if you would like a recommendation for whatever kinds of books that you read, whether it's poetry or fiction or nonfiction, what you could do is go to thehandsell.com/ask, and you'll have an opportunity to send me a list of, let's say 3, 4, or 5 books or authors that you've enjoyed. And if I can, I will take that list to a bookstore, much like Book Court here, and then either a bookseller or an author and I will maybe hopefully have a chance to go over that list and see if we can't come up with something for you to read next. So from Book Court here in Brooklyn, I have been talking with Brian Russell. His book is The Year of What Now? And I'm Ron Hogan, and I'm really glad that you were able to watch the Handsell. Thank you.